What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Jeff, aka SonOfMar on the PlayStation Network. Welcome back to the channel. I have here today Sony Bend. So I have my notes here. As I did with every other episode, I have my notebook of just like notes I jotted down and whatnot. So I want to talk about Bend because, as everyone knows, they are the creators of Days Gone right now. No confirmed date for that yet, but assuming in my book, probably May 2018. We'll see. Could be a little earlier, could be a little later. But I feel like it's going to definitely hit before July. So we'll see where it falls, though. Anyway, to give you guys a little bit of background on Bend Studios, in case you guys want to know more about them and what they're about and how that might influence the direction of Days Gone. Let's dive right in, shall we? So, they were founded back in 1993. And originally they were called Edict Studios. Up until after the creation of Siphon Filter. They were purchased by Sony in 2000, and then they were rebranded as Sony Bend Studios. Key personnel, two of the guys are John Garvin and Chris Reeve. They have been creative, directive people there for quite a while. I love Jarvis a lot, or Garvis, or I call him Jarvis. It's Garvin. But I love Garvin ever since his work on Siphon Filter. I love him to death. There's about 100 people that work there. I think the studio's gotten a little bit smaller than that, though. I think they're about 80, actually. I just don't think that's been updated. But they could still be at 100. If they are, then I mean, that's pretty awesome for them. But I think they downsized a little. Like, I think they're at 90 to 80 to 90. Anyway, so some of the games they've worked on in the past, under Edict Studios, they created Bubsy 3D. That was their first game, and that was when they were at 8 people. That was when they were initially starting. And Bubsy 3D, for those of you that don't remember that, it was okay, it wasn't great, just meh. And then their next game right after that, with collaborations from 989 Studios, which they're the ones that did like the hockey games and all that, the 989 Studios. And I think they helped make Twisted Metal. Like, they used to be a pretty big, kind of like an ex-dev kind of team where they would help assist to build games for Sony. They were huge back in the 90s and early 2000s. They helped, in collaboration with Edict, make Sony Bend. Or not Sony Bend, Siphon Filter. Duh. And Siphon Filter, for the day and age that came out, was huge. It was in a way revolutionary in a lot of ways because of how it played, and just the overall aspects of the game. Like, it's still, even to this day, it's still something that surprises me a lot, and that's why I love it so much. But due to the inexperienced story issues and missed deadlines, Siphon Filter was almost canceled several times back in the day, because Bend, Edict Studios was so small even at that time. They didn't know much about the world of video game development in the grand scheme of things, which is why 989 was so necessary for the development of this game. But on top of that, this was a huge learning curve for a lot of these guys. And right around this time, John Garvin showed up and he became the big figurehead for the story development side of things. He was the guy that really helped iron out story development and pacing stuff. He helped iron out voice dialogue and things like that. He became a real big leader, and he has been ever since. So, for PlayStation, their lineup was, back in 1996, Bubsy 3D, and then pretty much ever since they made Siphon Filter for the rest of the PS2 and most of the PS2 or PlayStation 2 era, with Siphon Filter in 99, Siphon Filter 2 in 2000, and Siphon Filter 3 in 2001. They were able to bang them out pretty quick, and like I said, in 2000, when Siphon Filter 2 came out, that's when they got rebranded as Sony Bend. Siphon Filter 1 was a sleeper hit for PlayStation. Like, it was something that the dev team, but also PlayStation as a whole, really didn't know what they had. It was kind of like Until Dawn. They didn't really promote it a bunch. They knew it was going to be probably good, but they weren't really sure what to do with it. So they were like, well, we'll push it, but not really. Well, we're not going to give it everything we have because we don't know what this is. And it ended up becoming a huge underdog game. Sold pretty damn well. And the sequel, and ever since then, they all did pretty well sales-wise and critically-wise. They're all fairly well received. The first couple were hugely well received. I think the only one that wasn't really all that well received was On the PS2, I think it was, which were though a lot of the games, Logan's Shadow and Dark Mirror were on the PS2 and the PSP. If I remember right, Omega Strain was the only one that was like, it wasn't that great. But Dark Mirror, good, and Logan's Shadow is really good. But really, Siphon Filter was at its best between 1 and 3 on the PS1. Like, they were so damn good. And, on PSP, with Siphon Filter, after Logan's Shadow, the game kind of ends with Logan. Basically, it was almost like kind of like a half curtain call kind of situation where it's like, we're taking time off, we're going to end it, but we're going to leave the door open if we ever want to come back to Siphon Filter. Obviously, they haven't, but they left the door open on Logan's Shadow, but they also kind of closed it to where it's like, this ends comfortably. If we want to never come back to it, it'll be fine. So after they did that, this was right around the time, towards the tail end of the PSP kind of era, where Resistance was a thing, the PS3 was out, all that kind of stuff, and the PSP was doing really, really well. So Ben was approached to do a PSP game and to make Resistance Retribution, which was awesome. It was an awesome freaking game. It made me, because I played it, it was what introduced me into Resistance, because I got PSP before I got PS3, and I fucking love that game. Which is why when the Vita came out and I saw Burning Skies and my buddy had it and I played it, I was like, oh, this isn't as good. That sucks. Oh, man. Because Burning Skies was alright, but it wasn't. Retribution was so fucking amazing. But then, naturally, Sony Ben was basically at that point like, hey, you guys make great PSP games. Like, granted, the Siphon Filter games, the Logan Shadow and Dark Mirror, they are both on the PS2 and the PSP, but you guys have a real good knack for the PSP. So we want you to continue to help promote games on that, and to do handhelds. So the PSP was kind of where they lived, and then when the Vita came out, Sony was like, Ben, we want you basically to do an Uncharted game. Because we want to help build up the library for the Vita and make it seem like something that people would really want. We want a big blockbuster. So Uncharted would make sense, because at that time, Uncharted 2 was huge. And there was like, what better way to get people to buy a Vita than to kind of attach it to something that's blowing up and growing huge, right? So Ben made Golden Abyss in 2011 and Retribution in 2009. And then they also, in 2012, did the card-based multiplayer kind of game Fight for Fortune, which was alright, it had good concept to it, but Golden Abyss was really where I think Ben really proved themselves in a lot of ways of, we know how to handle existing IPs, and not only that, but kind of make it our own a little bit of way. Granted, they made it like Uncharted, felt like Uncharted, but they did their own thing. For instance, they did their own way of collectibles, where you had to like touch on the screen, and you had to rub on the back of the Vita to scrape, to scrape stuff off of like maps and stuff like that, and to clean stuff and to see it. You had to manipulate the controller for lighting purposes with the camera on the back. Here, I'll grab my Vita. They did a lot of cool stuff. Like I said, they used the back touchpad, the camera, and the front touchscreen, and even this camera quite a bit, along with the motion control. They really had a great handle on the handheld itself and utilized it in a lot of great ways. On top of that, the game was hard, but wasn't obnoxiously hard. And it was a lot of fun. It brought in camera features, and just I love the collectible system in it and everything about it. Which is why the next part of this video is going to be kind of sad. Basically, Sony Bend was working on a follow-up to Golden Abyss. Like, they were flat out working on a new version of a sequel to Golden Abyss, while Uncharted 4 was being made and everything like that. And basically, Naughty Dog approached Ben, was like, we don't want you guys to make another Uncharted game. While Golden Abyss is good, we don't want this franchise to get oversaturated. Which makes sense. It's Naughty Dog's IP, and at that time, there was 3 Uncharteds and then the Golden Abyss, which would make 4, and then Naughty Dog was planning on doing Uncharted 4. And I don't even know if at that time they knew they were going to stop at 4 for a time or not. But they definitely were very protective of their game, which makes sense. I would be too. But it sucks because Golden Abyss was so good. Which brings me to my point that Ben was working on it, and they were probably workshopped in about a year, or at least close to a year into the project when they basically had to scrap it. So then Sony was basically like, okay, no more Uncharted game. We want you to still do a Vita game. So they got shifted over and basically were beginning the development of another IP. They were like, okay, we can't work on Uncharted. What's a game that would make sense to make a Vita game for? What's something that would make a lot of sense? And their game was naturally Infamous. Infamous was a IP that Sony Ben was going to make and bring to the Vita. It was going to be supposedly a bridging story for Cole McGrath, and it was going to kind of... What were the rumors that I saw on NeoGAF? Basically, it was going to either... The two story threads were either... It was going to take place after the first one and connect the first to the second, setting up the oh my god, I forget what John's name is in the Beast. It was going to set up the Beast and set up New Marais basically, but you'd still be in Empire City. It was that, and then the other one was basically it would be a different character, and it would be either the background of like, or it wouldn't be the background of anybody from Infamous 2. It would have been like a setup in a way for Second Son. It was gonna maybe have you play as like one of the super soldiers in a way for the DUP before Delsin gets infected or whatever, and he has his powers unlocked. But you know, obviously that never happened. That didn't come to fruition, which sucks because I think an Infamous game on the Vita would have been sick. So 2 years basically of time and resources, because they were also, after that got scrapped, they were working on one more, and I think they were trying to bring back Siphon Filter for a brief period of time for the Vita. About 2 years worth of time happened, and you know, in 2015, 2014 kind of area, Ben Studios was approached by Scott Rhodey and Sony and was basically like, look, you guys did amazing stuff for the Vita, and obviously the Vita's not doing amazing. It's got its hardcore audience, but there's no way we're going to really like revitalize it. There's no use for you to still be on the Vita and kind of almost like stuck there. So what we want to do, instead of being like Gorilla Cambridge and moving you to the VR unit stuff to see what you can do with that realm, we don't want you to do that. We want to see what you can do in the AAA sphere of games, and we want to see what you guys are really capable of. We want to see what you can do with the PS4 architecture and what you can do going forward for a big release. Keep in mind, their last big release was basically in the PS2 in terms of like a widespread AAA title. Even then, the Siphon Filter franchise was never really big budget. So Days Gone is their first real big attempt, if you will, at a big budget game, because it's an open world, dynamic weather, dynamic kind of environmental stuff, crafting system, deep game. They've never done a game like this. It's kind of like Guerrilla Games with Horizon. It's their first whatever. It's their first attempt at a game like this. So Days Gone is really exciting, but also nerve-wracking, warrantedly, because this is their first attempt at a game like this. And I feel for Ben. I don't want them to mess up. I don't want them to basically have their first attempt at a AAA title in years to not go well. That said, Days Gone looks great. I think it needs a lot more time in the form of, like, I think it needs one more year, but I think it's going really smooth. I think the transition went well, and I trust in Garvin. But, you know, I love Days Gone, and I want to make a video specific on it to talk about why I like it and why I think it could be a really big success if Sony does right by it, and if, you know, Ben is able to take the time they need for it. But hope you guys liked the video. Hit the like button if you liked it. Let me know comments, concerns, or if you like Days Gone or all that stuff. So I'll see you guys later.